Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. It was a warm spring evening in Harrisonville, a quiet town but marked by underlying tensions. The streets were almost deserted, except for a few cars and a breath of wind that rustled the leaves of the trees. Monique Carter, a black woman in her 30s, stepped off the bus after a long day's work at the local hospital. Her beige coat billowed slightly behind her, and her polished shoes clicked on the sidewalk. She was thinking about her dinner, the music she would listen to when she got home, and the phone call she needed to make to her father, Major Thomas Carter, a general respected and admired throughout the city. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the roar of a patrol car. Two police officers, Officer Smith and Officer Johnson, known for their arrogance and prejudice, slowed down and stopped abruptly in front of her. The headlights illuminated her face, revealing a calm but astonished expression. "Madam, stop!" Smith shouted in an authoritative voice. Monique raised her hands, surprised and confused. "Excuse me, what have I done?" she asked, trying to remain calm. Johnson sneered. "You know perfectly well why. Get down from there." Monique felt a shiver run down her spine. There was no tangible reason for this arrest. Yet she knew that verbally defending herself against these men could worsen the situation. The police officers handcuffed her roughly, ignoring her look of incomprehension and injustice. Inside the patrol car, the air was heavy, thick with tension and unease. Monique stared out the window, watching the city lights flash by, her mind silently calculating her next move. She knew the arrest was unjust, but she couldn't yet imagine that simply walking down that street would set off a chain of events that would change the lives of everyone involved. The patrol car moved slowly along the streets lit by yellow streetlights, Monique sitting in the back, her hands cuffed behind her back. Her heart was pounding, but her face remained impassive, masking the fear and indignation that boiled inside. Officer Smith, at the wheel, broke the silence. "You know, it's better to cooperate, otherwise it's going to end badly." Monique turned her head slightly, her gaze cold and confident. "Could you tell me why I've been arrested?" "I haven't done anything wrong." Officer Johnson, sitting next to the driver, sneered, displaying a mocking smile. "You know very well. Don't pretend." Monique felt a dull anger rising within her, but she knew that an impulsive reaction could worsen the situation. She took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "I'm just coming home from work. If you can't give me a valid reason, I advise you to release me." Smith glanced at his partner, but Johnson shook his head, his features contorted with arrogance and prejudice. They turned sharply into an alley, and Monique understood that they had no intention of listening to her. The car stopped in front of the police station, and they forcibly pulled her out. The handcuffs burned her wrists, and her legs trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anger and frustration. As she was pushed into the station, Monique caught the eye of several officers who stared at her curiously, but none seemed to intervene. She knew her arrest was a mistake, an injustice based purely on the color of her skin. In the station lobby, the officers led her into a cold, brightly lit interrogation room. The metallic clinking of handcuffs echoed on the tiled floor. Despite the humiliation and injustice, Monique remained upright, her eyes fixed on the door, waiting for the truth to be revealed. As Monique sat silently in the interrogation room, the police officers began to show the first signs of nervousness. Smith and Johnson exchanged furtive glances, aware that something was not going as planned. Suddenly, the telephone at the station rang. Johnson picked it up and listened intently. His face froze, and a shiver of concern ran down his spine. "What? Wait. Are you serious?" he murmured, turning to Smith. Smith frowned. "What's going on?" Johnson, trembling slightly, replied. "The girl, the woman we just arrested, is Monique Carter. She is the daughter of Major Thomas Carter." "Yes, General Carter." The silence that followed was heavy. Monique, sitting calmly, perceived something in their nervousness but remained impassive, her hands still handcuffed. Smith tried to downplay the situation. "It's not a big deal, we can still sort this out." Johnson shook his head. "You don't understand. Major Thomas Carter? He's an influential man. Respected everywhere. If this leaks, we're finished." Monique, aware that her release now depended on the caution and control of the police, remained calm. A glimmer of satisfaction crossed her eyes, but she said nothing. The police officers quickly exchanged a glance, realizing they had underestimated the situation. The seemingly routine arrest was about to turn into a disaster for them. The handcuffs, the chair in the interrogation room, the clanging of metal, everything became a symbol of their mistake. In the hall, the sound of heels suddenly echoed. A man entered with an imposing and authoritative presence. Monique looked up and recognized her father, Major Thomas Carter, surrounded by his superiors and several lawyers. The police officers' hearts raced. They had just arrested the daughter of a respected general, and this arrest was going to cost them much more than a simple disciplinary report. Monique, calm and composed, said nothing. She knew that the moment of revenge, or at least of truth, was approaching. The door to the interrogation room burst open. Major Thomas Carter, imposing and respected, entered with a confident stride. His sharp, determined eyes immediately fixed on the police officers. Behind him, 2 lawyers and a senior officer followed, reinforcing the impression that the situation was about to spiral completely out of Smith and Johnson's control. Monique remained seated, calm, but her eyes shone with a silent triumphant glow. She knew that her father's power and status would change the dynamics of this confrontation. General Carter addressed the police officers in a firm but controlled voice. "Officers Smith and Johnson, can you explain why my daughter was arrested tonight?" Smith, his face pale, stammered. We thought." Johnson tried to interrupt him, but the general raised his hand. "No. You have nothing worthwhile to say, do you?" The tension in the room was palpable. Every word spoken resonated heavily. The police officers felt their arrogance and prejudice backfiring. Their unjust arrest had just become a potential scandal that could ruin their careers. Monique finally spoke, in a calm but sharp voice. "I went home from work, and yet you stopped me for no reason. You judged my skin color above all else." The general nodded slowly, as if to emphasize each word. "You have made a serious mistake. Not only have you humiliated my daughter, but you have also jeopardized your own career." The police officers lowered their eyes, ashamed. Smith murmured, We are sorry." But the words seemed empty, incapable of erasing the injustice they had just committed. General Carter signaled to his lawyers and superiors. The disciplinary and investigative procedures would be immediate. Monique, finally freed from the handcuffs, stood up. She faced the police officers calmly and with dignity. "I hope this experience will serve as a lesson to you. You never arrest someone based on prejudice. Never." The faces of the police officers were now marked by regret and fear. They had just discovered, too late, that injustice always has a price, and that a simple impulsive act can turn into a personal catastrophe. The following morning, the story was already making headlines in local newspapers and on social media: General's daughter unjustly arrested by local police. Images of Monique, calm and dignified despite her arrest, had shocked the entire city. The officers, Smith and Johnson, were immediately suspended pending an internal investigation. Their superiors held them responsible not only for their racist behavior but also for damaging the reputation of the police. Tension, fear, and regret followed them everywhere they went. Monique, for her part, was received by her father, General Carter, in his office. Her gaze was proud, but also protective. "Dad, she began. The general cut her off gently. "You acted with calm and dignity. You showed that strength lies not in intimidation, but in self-control. Today, you taught a lesson to these men and to all those who believe they can judge without knowing." Monique smiled slightly, relieved and proud. She knew that this incident, although traumatic, had a much greater impact, It had exposed the injustice and reminded everyone that racism always has a price. The police officers, for their part, faced severe disciplinary proceedings. Their reputations were tarnished, and their careers in the local police force were jeopardized. Every moment they spent reflecting on their actions was accompanied by the weight of their mistake. The message was clear: injustice, discrimination, and arrogance always end up backfiring on those who perpetrate them. Monique returned to her life, more determined than ever to fight injustice and inspire those who suffer discrimination. The story of her unjust arrest became a local symbol of courage, dignity, and justice, reminding everyone that respect and integrity know no skin color.